In the first lesson we set up our UI collection view, and in this lesson we're going to work a bit more with the collection view. One difference between the UI collection view and a table view controller is that the table view controller, when you select a certain row, you get some visual feedback regarding that selection because the row will turn by default blue. With our collection view, you can see even though I tap on the different elements, the UI collection view cells, there's no visual feedback to the user that their interaction is being registered with the app. Sure, when I scroll I get some feedback, but when I select on each cell, I'd like to see some kind of highlight or something that lets me know that that cell is actually selected. So in this lesson we're going to work with how to do that by working with the UICollectionView delegate methods to make that interaction happen. Okay, to get started I'm going to switch back to the viewcontroller.m file, and I'm going to implement two more methods. First, the collection view didSelectItemAtIndexPath method. I'm going to open and close the curly brace there, but leave the content of that method blank for now, while I bring in the second method I need to implement, which is the collection view didDeselectItemAtIndexPath, and open and close the curly brace. So the first method will control what happens when a certain item is selected, and the second method will handle what happens when an item is deselected. What we're going to have our cell do is we'll have the UI label control of the selected cell change colors when it's selected and then change back to its original color when deselected. So I'm going to start off with the method that allows me to change the color of the cell when it's selected, which is the didSelectItemAtIndexPath method. Because I want to work with that cell, I first need to create a reference to the cell that was selected. I'll do that by creating my own variable called UICollectionView, and I'll just call it mySelectedCell. And how do I get a reference to that cell? Well, I can send a message to the collection view and ask it for the cell for item at index path. And what's the index path argument I need to pass in? Well, fortunately this method gives me that variable index path, so I can just put that here. This will give me an object called mySelectedCell from the class UICollectionViewCell. What I'd really want to do is say then mySelectedCell and access that label control, which was the pattern label. But if I try, nothing's working. It's not offering to autocomplete that for me. Why not? Well, that's because we're using the class UICollectionViewCell, the generic UICollectionViewCell class, instead of our own customized UICollectionViewCell subclass, which is our patternViewCell. So instead of using the generic UICollectionViewCell, I actually want to use my custom patternViewCell class. And then the right-hand side of the assignment operator, what I need to do is tell Objective-C to treat whatever is returned by collection view cell for item index path as a pattern view cell, not just the UI collection view cell that it's expecting to return. So I'll cast that by opening a parentheses and typing pattern view cell star, close parentheses, and now it'll treat the value of this as a pattern view cell. Now, because I've cast my selected cell as a pattern view cell, I can access the outlets I have in that object, which is my pattern, and I want the pattern label. And I want to set the pattern label background color, and I'm going to set it to blue. So UI color. So now when the cell is selected, the background color of the label view will turn blue. For good measure, I'm going to change the font color to white. So my selected cell pattern label dot text color, and I'm going to change that to UI color white color. So that happens when that handles what happens when the cell is selected. When the cell is deselected, I want to change my colors back to their original properties. So I'm basically going to copy all this code I used for when the cell is selected, paste it into the method that handles when a cell is deselected. And this time, instead of setting the background color to blue, I'll set the background color to white when it's deselected, and I'll set the text to black. So let's see what this looks like with the app running now. Now, when I tap on one of the cells, you'll see that the background color of the selected cell turns blue and the font changes to white exactly as I expected. When I tap on a second cell, that cell becomes blue and white, and the first cell executes the deselected method and switches back to the white background with the black text. So notice by default, when I select on a new table view cell, the previously selected cell becomes deselected, which is a complicated way of saying, really, in the default functionality of the UI collection view, I can only select one cell at a time. Well, there may be times that I want to enable the user to select more than one cell. Let's say I want to tell the user, select all the patterns that you like, in which case they need to select 3 or 4 patterns from my collection view. What I can do is adjust a property of the UI collection view. The property that I need to adjust is the allows multiple selection property. So what I'll do in the viewDidLoad method is say self my collection view allows multiple selection, and now I'll set it to yes. And now when I run the application, you'll see it behaves slightly differently. Now I can select the first cell and it behaves the same way, but when I select that second cell, instead of deselecting the first cell, it allows me to select multiple cells. The second behavior change is now when I tap on a cell again, that is how I cause it to become deselected. The final thing I might want to do then is get a list from the UI collection view of all the cells that are currently selected. What I'm going to do is make one change to my user interface and add a button bar at the bottom. And then I'll select the button that comes with the button bar, and I'll change, in the attribute inspector, I'll change its title to get selected cells. Now I just need to write a method to handle that interaction. In my viewController.h file, I'll declare a method, IBAction, get selected cells, and I don't need to pass in any arguments, so I'll just delete the end of that and just finish it with a semicolon. And then in the viewController.m file, I'll implement this method, get selected cells. And I'll basically be getting an array from my my view controller. And what I'll be getting is an array of all the index paths of these cells that are currently selected in the collection view. So I'll declare an array, my selected cells, and that will be self.myCollectionView, and the method is index paths for selected items. And that will give me an array of all the index paths I need. Then all I'm going to do for now is just do an nslog statement. nslog statement. And say selected index paths, and output that out with my selected cells. The last thing I need to do is make the connections between this method I declared and the button I put on my user interface. So I'll switch back to the storyboard, select my view controller, go to the connections inspector. There I should see my method I declared, get selected cells, and I'll draw a connection between that method and the button I put on the interface. And now when I run the application, I can select a series of cells, and when I press the Get Selected Cells button, what I see in my output then is a list of all the index paths. The index path, remember, is a set of two properties, both the section and the index within that section. Because I only have one section, all the section numbers are 0 for that first section of my UI collection view. And then I have the index values of the 4 items that are selected in that collection view. So in this lesson you got to see how to work with the delegate methods of the UI collection view, both the method for handling what to do when an item is selected and the method for handling what to do when an item is deselected in the UI collection view.